I pledge allegiance to the
of the
flag
United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
stands
one
one
nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, John.
So just double check.
Yeah. Yeah, it's recording. All right. Just making sure it was recording. Okay. Just want to start out by saying I did make requests of all the departments to sharpen pencils.
Okay, where do you want to start? Okay.
Nope. Say that one more time.
Sorry.
Can you say that one more time? Feedback.
I just said okay.
Oh, so I did have one department
Can you
head send a message about potential cuts and some other issues that they had brought up for discussion. Obviously, in January, there was a request made by one of the department heads for a potential increase. They understand the economic conditions of our times and rescinded that request, and actually had a couple other areas to look at for potential cuts. The other department heads doing the same thing right now and trying to find areas to make up the potential difference in lost revenue from sales tax. Does that make sense?
Okay, so do you want to start with those adjustments that you got?
You should have gotten a copy of our potential adjustments and changes that were already made to the budget. Right. Yep. So the top portion of that attachment are changes made to the budget based on actual things that have occurred already and areas of adjustment. And then on the bottom are the potential areas to adjust. Does everyone have that page in front of them? I hope.
If you can just go over them, because I can't bring that up.
No problem.
Yeah, I have it at me too, John, but it's because I'm looking at it on my phone. So
No problem.
for those that are using their phone can't look at it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
that's me.
going through them right now. So we have already the potential changes we'll go through first. So potential.
John, do you want me to share my screen so that it can be up there or no?
Well, we can look at it on our screen if we go off of visual. We can still hear.
It's all right. I'll read through them so everyone's aware, because the public needs to be made aware as well. So I'll read them anyway.
Yeah, I'm.
Okay, on potentials, as the building inspector had mentioned, he also sent out a memo of potential fee for single family for fire and safety inspections. That would increase revenue by $8,840. And then an annual landlord registry fee due to the conditions that the building inspector had mentioned would be about $10,000 in additional revenue. There's also some potential to decreases in salaries for non-union members. If it was just a 2%, it would reduce the expenses by $6,500. If there was no overlap on the chief transition, it would be $20,480. If we did not have field trips this year, it would save us a net of $5,600. Potentially reducing.
Is that just that's for the summer program?
Yes. We do get a lot of
Okay.
revenue. It's about a $5,600 difference because we pay for staff members to go and some of those that are less fortunate. Reduction in park staff would save us about $5,000. We would have the rec full-timer assist in that area. And then flag football, if it doesn't occur, it would save us about $2,600 total with expenses and personnel. Those are some pretty real potentials, which would save us about $56,420 overall. We need about $88,000. So some other areas that are potential.
Okay, can we talk about the ones that you just did?
Sure.
The ones that you just mentioned? Okay, I know we had the discussion the other night about the landlord registry. It's still my thought, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, that, you know, at the inception, we told them that it was a one-time thing unless they sold or amended their properties. I don't see how we can go against that. That's what they were told, and I don't believe that it's right to change it. That's just my opinion. Anybody else want to chime in about that one?
I share your sentiment exactly. And when I think back to how unpopular that whole thing was with the landlord registry and the rates, I'm not eager to say that we're going back on that and we're going to charge them more money. If the fire and safety inspections are a source of revenue, I don't understand why we can't take some of those operating costs out of that.
I agree 100% as well. I'm confused as to why we have to mail out stuff to people that we already know are on the registry every year.
They're required to fill out a form every year. It's part of the law.
So they do re-sign up every year. They just was told that they only pay once.
Correct. So the way that it works and the way that we set it up is that it's a one-time fee, and we all, those of us that were on the board at this time, all promised them, especially when we were adding the fire and safety inspection fees, that this was going to be a one-time registry fee. However, every year you have to just continue to say that this is exactly what you have and what property you have. The only time you would have to pay again is if it changes. So for example, the property that is at 2 South Montgomery and 3 North Street that I fill out the landlord registry for, we just continue to fill it out. Nothing changes. We have 2 commercial units and 1 residential unit. I fill out the form every year. We only had to pay once. If I changed one of those units from a commercial to a residential, or I changed my residential to a commercial, or changed any of that, I would have to pay the fee again. I am not looking to charge them on an annual basis. We made that promise that we were not going to do that, especially when we did the fire and safety inspections. And I think that that would add an undue hardship onto our landlords, considering that in the times that we have, many people are even struggling to pay their rent, and the landlords are paying taxes.
I agree, 100% agree.
Brian, you have any thoughts? Brian?
Brian, you're on mute.
I got him. You're good. Go ahead, Brian. You're good.
I agree with what Faith had says, that the situation of the economy right now and the agreements that were made to the landlords back then, that would only be a one-time fee on that. I don't see where we should increase anything now other than the fire and safety inspections, which are very essential to the safety and health of the residents that are living in their rental properties. So I'm for not raising it.
John Ramos?
I agree. We made a promise to them when we started this, and although I agree with Brian, the fire inspections, if there's an undue cost that is obviously unforeseeable, then we have to address that. But I don't want them charged again if we have to.
Okay, so that's a no-go, John Ravella.
Just for the board's purposes. So when we first did that law, that's exactly what the board had decided and discussed. Just so you're aware, we did discuss, because we didn't know at the time what the actual cost would be, potentially in the future thinking about raising that fee, that one-time fee, so we're covering these future costs a little bit better. Looking into that maybe, but not the annual, if you're not going to do it annually. I understand that. That makes sense. And we did advise them that we would look at it in the future if there was a need. So we could probably
So
do
you're
that.
talking about any new landlords that come into the registry?
That's right. All right.
Okay.
the fire and safety fees on the single family rentals, how was that? How do you feel about that one?
I think we should be doing fire and safety inspections on all rental property in the village, including single-family homes. I don't have a problem with that.
Thank you.
Neither
Dan?
do I. Oh, I'm sorry.
I could go either way on that one. I'm fine with it.
Okay, John Ramos?
I agree with Lynn. We should, with the single-family homes, there's still safety aspects that they have to abide by, and I agree with the fire and safety.
Brian Sebring?
Oop,
Brian?
sorry. Hold on, I gotta take them off. Go ahead, you're good, Brian.
Okay, I agree that we should, if the need be, you know, on the single family, because sometimes they want to put in an extra room for, this is the way to catch them. So I agree with fire and safety fees increase if need be.
Okay, I'm in agreement.
How about Faith?
Faith?
Hi,
Faith?
sorry, I'm back, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just asking about the single family fire and safety.
I am 100% in favor of charging fire and safety for single family rentals.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks. Okay. Do you want to keep going through the list, or do you want me to talk about what I already made changes to?
just keep going through that list so you can get a feeling of how everybody feels about those suggestions.
Okay. How do you feel about not having the flag football program this year? It usually starts in June.
Well, I know you're on the county call every day. Has this been at all, now we're up to May 15th. So do you anticipate at all being able to have any kind of activities in the summer months, in June, for instance?
The county said there will be an advisory put out shortly. They have not done that yet. But on today's call specifically, they said they're putting an advisory out. There were several municipal leaders that had suggested that they really look at summer camps, since most of the people that are likely to go back to work in June on this rolling regression back to work would likely need assistance for their children during that time as well, and something for them to do. So they're encouraging them to strongly consider having the summer camps remain open.
Have they said it, has the health department said anything about requiring any potential counselors to get tested to make sure that they're a negative? Or how would we assure people that the people that are in direct contact with their children can be in contact with their children?
No, they have not given any guidance. The only thing we do, which is what we do for all the summer camp, is to make sure that vaccinations are updated for everybody. That's a health department requirement already.
John, what is the last possible date that Mike can do registration for flag football? How long can he push that off?
Probably another month.
What is the potential savings if we decide now not to do flag football? Sorry, now that I had to sign in on my phone, I can't pull my sheet up anymore.
2,600.
I'm sorry, say that again?
2,600.
I feel
So-
like that's a pretty insignificant amount of money. We should move on and look at something else and revisit that.
Okay.
That's just
Agreed.
my opinion.
Agreed. It's not going to make or break the budget at this point, and we can decide that as it's closer to the
What's
time.
the last date they can register summer camp people? Because I think that's a significantly bigger potential savings. And I don't know if people are going to send kids to summer camp, even if they can.
I
So
will.
summer camp, they register right up until day the summer camp starts, correct?
They can register all the way through the last day if they really wanted to. There's no end.
But we have to do hiring and stuff before that.
Yeah, my kids are going if it's open.
I think we all have to be cognizant of the fact that a lot of people are anxious to get back to work. And if that happens, they need that summer rec program. They need that for their children.
Yeah.
I agree, but we're still at the whim of the Department
Right.
of Health, the county, the state of New York.
Yes, we
We're
are.
we're all definitely in limbo when it comes to those things.
I don't know if we know the answer, but do we take on any any more liability than normal, bringing people in, knowing that this could be an issue?
As soon as the Department of Health gives us approval to have the camp, that's all we're really
Okay.
required to have. Yeah.
Okay.
We just have to make sure we're abiding by their guidelines, which we will, obviously. But yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd
It's-
hate to see, yeah, it's a conundrum because
Well, it's-
on one hand, you don't know, and yeah, if people get back to work, that's kind of their daycare
Well, that's
for a
it.
lot of them.
Yeah, and daycare is considered an essential service. So I get it. I get it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think that there would be some kind of, I mean, as we get closer to May 15th, maybe there'll be more directions about how we ease things in and what's going to happen. So I'd leave it there for now. And if it doesn't come to fruition, then there's, we can use that money for something else because it is in the general fund.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
With
one
that
that's-
said, the field trips, I think sending kids out from our space,
Correct.
I think that might be more of an issue for me than even the that's saved there. I think if we're in a controlled environment, that's one thing, but sending them out might be an
I
issue.
agree.
I do too.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Mike,
Is
and
it-
also,
is-
sorry.
Is it a possibility, I'm just throwing it out there, because if we're having that discussion about there won't be any field trips, they won't be leaving the premises,
Mhm.
there might be some kind of opportunity to get someone to come in to do something with the kids, perhaps.
Yeah, we do that
That's
now.
another option if they can't.
We bring in a
Yeah, but I'm
person.
talking about maybe
pets,
something a
reptiles.
little more, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
The last one that Mike had brought up was potential reduction in parks staff, having some of the, including the rec full-timer, do some of the parks work for some period of time. If there's not going to be some programming during some of those weeks or months, then he could work on that.
What are you talking about? Mowing, things like that?
Yes.
Well, as long as they're trained on the equipment, I don't see why you can't do that.
He believes
What's
that
that potential savings there?
about 5,000.
Okay. Are you talking about just in the parks? Or are you talking about if there's lawns to be mowed, that kind of stuff as well?
Everything.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Then we have two
Yep.
other ones. One is potential. Right now, we have budgeted for a period of overlap of pay for the police chief position. Depending on how that goes, we may not have to pay that overlap time period. Part of that is a personnel discussion, which we can't have here. But that's a potential. It'd be about $20,480 if we don't have that transition where we're paying both.
Okay.
We can talk about that, and we have exec on Tuesday. I'll ask Dave about how to coordinate that with you all. The other is if we only do the 2% for non-union staff, there's proposals regarding union wages. This would be more aligned with that potential, and that would save us $6,500.
Okay, he's doing.
Say that again?
We don't have that many non-union.
No, that'd just be for 2%. There was a position that was requesting more than that. So if they don't get, it's in the budget for that. So if we don't have that in the budget, it saves us $6,500.
Okay,
I have another spot to talk about the rest of everyone else. So.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification.
Yep. Okay.
anybody have anything about that? Okay,
How many people are we talking about for this, John? I'm a little confused on your answer to Sue.
That is regarding one person.
One employee.
Yes.
So you're not counting your
are
department
you
heads with
asking how
non-union
many
people.
non-union employees there are in total?
That's what I thought you were asking.
No.
It was at some point. So how many non-union employees are we talking about, John?
That we didn't
We're
talk
not
about
there
that yet.
yet.
Okay,
So the amount that John was just talking about with reducing, there was one person that asked for a raise that was over a 2% increase. So
Okay.
by not doing that and that one person only being at a 2% increase, it saves the budget $6,500.
okay.
Correct.
I got
Down
it.
on the, down on the bottom is that other discussion.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks, I can't see that
Yeah.
paper.
No, I know. That's why I wanted to make sure you understood
Thanks.
where we were.
Ready?
Go.
Okay. So the other options for potential discussions to make up the 88,000 that we need. A couple of them are still in negotiations with the union, so we just have to be careful how we discuss those. But if there's a potential for $19,500 in savings, if the insurance buyout is capped. And there's a potential of about 59,000 in savings in the A fund if there is an adjustment to retro pay. But we'd have to discuss that in exec.
Right.
What's that number again, John? Could you repeat that?
Just an A fund is 50,
59,407.
Okay.
and those are on the
Thank you.
sheets as well when you get a chance. There's also some in the F fund and the G fund, the water and sewer as
Yeah,
well.
no,
We can't discuss anything about those two lines right now?
I would recommend against that at this time.
Okay.
We can talk about it in exec, and then
All right.
after we can discuss it again if we need to.
Okay.
There's two more. One is if you gave no raises to the non-union people at all, it'd be around $20,000. So
Would that negate the 6,500 from up top?
that would be, yeah,
Would that be in
No.
addition to?
in addition to.
In addition to. Now that's, John, can you answer the question
Oh, it
that
does.
Sue
That
was?
does include that. Sorry.
Yes.
So that would negate the 6,500.
Yes,
Yes.
the 20,000 included, because that's everybody.
That's everybody. Yes.
So the net effect would be 14,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many are there? Did you count them up? There's
13.
Yeah. There's
So 2 are part-timers,
13 total non-union members.
yeah. And 2 of them are allocated to another fund. Besides a fund.
Does that make sense?
Okay, what does everybody think of that?
I'm in favor of that. I'm in
Favor
favor
of-
of
I'm sorry.
no raises right now, especially until we can figure out what the sales tax becomes. If we want to, John, would it be possible to make a resolution later if the sales tax comes in way higher and we can make those increases later? Would that be possible or no?
You can make a budget adjustment. But just so you know, we included in our numbers to reduce already an adjustment in sales tax as well. We've already taken a lot out. Based
I
on
know.
projections.
I'm just saying if the sales tax came in great and what higher than we're expecting, then if we have at the end of the year being able to fix it.
So
Yeah.
here's my thing on that, and I appreciate the conversation. However, to save $13,500 to completely change the morale of our essential employees that run our departments, I do not think that is smart for us to do at this time, considering that there's other areas that we're discussing that can get us to where we need to go to not have to pierce the tax cap and not have to take department heads 2% raise away when we're giving it to everybody else that's contractual just because they don't have a contract. 13.5 does not make that huge of a difference to continue to have the morale and the dedication and the hard work of these essential employees that work for us.
Lynn, you have anything?
Yeah, I totally get what Faith is saying, but I also know from just my own husband's job, very often managerial people are the first people who do not get that raise. The contractual people get taken care of first. So I get what you're saying. It doesn't necessarily make for good feelings. It's not a small sum of money, but it's a decent sum of money. If we can find $13,000 somewhere else, I'm okay with giving everyone their 2% raise. But I think we need to go ahead and give a raise. This is a very, very tough time economically. Everybody knows that. And I don't want to take anyone's raise away from them. That's a terrible thing. But I also know it happens a lot in the business world. It's not uncommon.
And the state did just freeze all raises as well.
Except the governor.
Except
Yes.
Brian? Brian?
Hold on, I gotta unmute him. Hold on. Got it.
Okay. I would like to look at this at the end as all that we're going to be looking at and then talk about it a little bit more. You know, I don't want to take away raises either, but if the numbers just don't add up to where we can do it or we can't do it, that's up to the bottom line when we get to the end. So I suggest we wait till the end.
John Ramos?
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I think we ought to hold off and wait till we're at the last sentence or the last line. And after we see all the readjustments, I think we should revisit it and see what we can come up with.
Larry? Larry?
I'm here finally. I agree with Faith. However, I also agree with Brian too. We need to wait to see what else we can, how the budget turns out, because it's tough times now. A lot of people are not working. We got to, hopefully they can pay for the taxes when it comes. So we got to sharpen the pencil and see what we can do. And I don't want to take away raises either. I understand Faith. And just wait to the end and see what we come up with. That's it.
Well, I hear both arguments. You know, these are essential employees. I mean, they worked with the community at their own risk for a long time before we had to, do things by appointment. Not having a raise because you're not a union employee. I understand the management point of it. We'll see what happens at the end. If we're short, I'm willing to give up my salary. That's $7,750 to put towards that 13,000 that we need. So
Me too,
what does
Sue.
that
So I will pledge mine too. I will give up mine, and that puts us exactly where we need to be if at the end that's what's needed. However, I do think the first two items that we spoke about before we even got to this would get us to where we needed to be within that range. But if it came down to it, I will continue this year without pay so that the managers can have theirs.
Okay, so when we get to the end, let us know, John, and you have that money if we need it.
Right. The other potential, which was discussed in every year, is if you had removed dispatching from the A line, it would save you about $189,907.
No, 91.
Sorry,
Sorry, no, no, no.
91,000. 91,000. If you took out A line, it would be 91,000 in difference. So that's
Okay,
all
so what would happen, I know we had this discussion before, so if we removed it from the A line, would it roll over to 911?
That's what would happen if you did that, yes.
So I'm going to just say, as I say every year, I am not in favor of removing dispatching at all and laying off any of our employees. So that's not one of the areas that I'm in favor of. And that has not changed after all of the extensive information that we received last year.
Before we would dissolve an entire shift in a department, I'd like to take a harder look at the police overtime and see if there's any way to save some money there. And I also have questions. I don't know, is it appropriate to discuss it in this format about what we're doing with the police chief job? I think we have some options there where we could have
Yes.
substantial savings.
That's one of the ones we have to wait to talk about, the chief position, but the other stuff, yes.
Okay, well, I'm not willing to dissolve that dispatch shift until we've exhausted every other possibility. I mean, we're talking about not giving people raises, and now we're talking about taking someone's job away in an incredibly difficult time. That would be the very last option for me.
Dan?
Uh-oh.
Dan?
No, I see both sides of that, but I think I have a hard time paying something that we can get for free. But then I for two, also heard the argument that we're not getting the same thing. Me and Ben went out to look at the 911 center a little bit earlier this year. They're very well equipped. At the same time, right now, putting people out of work is horrible. But if you're ever going to put someone out of work, right now when they can make $4,400 a month in unemployment would be the time to do the job while still being comfortable. I don't know if I could actually make a decision on this, especially if I'm not going to be on the board for too much longer. I think that that's a decision for people that are going to be.
John Ramos?
Could you save me for last, please?
Oh, okay. Brian Sebring?
You good?
Okay. I want to keep the A-line dispatchers because there are times that we have emergencies during the night. They do work for the day shift and whatever, you know, they pick up the slack where it needs to be. You always have somebody in that office all the time. So I believe the residents of Walden deserve that. I don't really want to have to do that. That would be my real last course of action. But right now, I say keep them on.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Larry?
I'm sort of on the fence with this. However, I'd like to wait and see if we can cut something further from the budget before we make a decision on that. My opinion.
Okay, John Ramos?
I agree. I think we ought to, we got to analyze these numbers, and we should use this particular line as the ultimate last resort. I'm on the fence, but I'm more inclined to not dissolving the A line, since I've been in law enforcement, and having a dispatcher will, is a key essential point to the guys on the road, to the services provided to the people that are coming up to the door. So I think we just sharpen our pencils a little bit more.
And if I can just add to that, Mayor, sorry for jumping in, but also with a lot of the changes that has happened with the bail reform, I just don't necessarily know that that number is going to exactly work out to be what it is.
Okay,
True.
thanks.
Okay.
Next, John?
So before I go any further, I just want to let you know, we do have fund balance in all three funds sufficient to do what we need to do if we had to. Obviously, it's important not to dive into that if we can help it. And we haven't yet, so which is good. And it'll actually increase a good bit at the end of this year because we were able to save in certain areas. And we did have spending freezes in some areas as well. So we should increase that significantly again. We're obviously not in fiscal stress at this time because we've been diligent in doing that. But if all else fails and the board's inclined, we always could go that route instead of just keep adding to that fund balance. I personally don't believe that having too high of a fund balance is justified because that's taxpayers' dollars. That's not our money. And if we're taking too much, then we're overtaxing it, and we should use and utilize some of that if we have to. That being said, I just want to let you know there were some changes that we made. I just want to make sure the public's aware of those as well. We did mention a couple of them, including the budgeted garbage revenue and expenses due to the new contract, and the audited garbage bills, which increased revenue as well. That budgeted increase to revenue from audited bills was $5,504. The amount that we need to budget for expenses was reduced by $152,748 from the initial budget. Still much higher than this year, but still was not as much as we had expected. There were some changes to employee benefits that will help, and change to a buyout, which also helped. So that reduced our need from 216,000 down to 22,000 originally. That being said, obviously we're aware of the economic circumstances of sales tax, and we did adjust down sales tax $66,000. Believe that's pretty conservative. Middle of the road. There's not going to be zero sales tax revenue, it'll just be less sales tax revenue. So we reduced that significantly, and from that is how we got to 88,000 in the general fund. From what we cut in what you've agreed upon so far, they reduced us down to a need of $62,000 total for the A fund. For the water fund, we found a couple other areas that we could reduce. We were able to increase a couple revenue spots that we were conservative on. In water, the interest and penalties went up 2,000. We were able to reduce the miscellaneous expenses by 2,000. That's line 8320.490, and we can go over those again. And also the mechanics small tools by 1,000, and that's 8340.441. That's both in the F fund. So that gave from the original need of 12,538, we reduced that by 5,000. Now we only need 7,538 in the water fund. And then the sewer fund, we also found a couple areas to adjust, to assist. Originally, we needed 31,180. We were able to adjust interest and penalties about 2,000, reducing education, which is 8110,460 by 500, 8120,447, which is pipe by 1,000, and material supply, which is 812410 by 1,000, which reduced $4,500, and now the need is 26,680 in the sewer fund as of right now.
Did we do any kind of I know that we can't tell how long this is going to last. Did we make any adjustments on fuel costs because of the price reduction that we're seeing now?
We did slightly, but you never know if that is going to increase in the next 6 months. So we did reduce some, but not drastically.
I don't think we cut the sales tax enough. Even if we're at 25% of our normal sales, that means we lose $15,000 a week. We're already going to be 6 weeks into the fiscal year.
Next fiscal year?
Yeah, I don't think we're going out until at least June.
Yeah, that's because
This
we're
budget
going to
doesn't-
lose some of it this year and some of it next year.
Right.
It's about 22,000 a week if we lost everything. If we had no sales tax revenue at all, it's around 22,000 a week.
So you're planning for 4 weeks
6 weeks at 50%.
at 50%?
Yeah,
So you're planning-
conservatively. Yeah. Of the new year. We'll have some reduction in this year as well, but we had some other areas that we had made up for and we reduced spending, so we should be okay this year.
I don't think that number's high enough.
So I'd like to just go back though for a second, John, because I wasn't following the calculation that you just said. So with reducing the sales tax, the way that we just discussed,
Yes.
and the budget adjustments that we made before coming in tonight, we needed to find $88,000, correct?
That's correct.
Then what we talked about of with doing single family fire and safety registries, the only doing the 2% increase for that one employee, the no overlap for the transition,
didn't do
no
that.
summer.
We didn't agree
We
to
didn't do
that.
Okay.
That's something
Yeah,
I'll set
there's,
an
well,
exact.
because he
I
wanted
thought
to
we
talk
wait.
about it in exec.
Yeah, we have to wait on that one.
Right.
Okay. Then I understand the math.
Yep. Yeah, I was
I
just doing what,
understood that we couldn't talk about it in detail. I just thought that it was still a potential.
it is a potential. Yeah, we just have to talk about it in detail before
Okay.
we can make that decision. I would think anyway. There's a couple different scenarios that would have to play out to make that come to fruition. I just want to make sure the board's aware before we
Understood.
make-
Understood.
May I ask a question to Mr. Ravella?
Go
I'm
ahead.
here.
Talking about eliminating dispatch and reducing park staff and all this other stuff, is it absolutely vital that we hire a new parking attendant, parking lot person, whatever you call them? Doesn't our police department have the capability of writing parking tickets? Do we really need to have a position for that?
That's an hourly position and only comes in as needed. So they would only write and be in when that's a need, and it's just to enforce really the downtown parking lots and parking spaces that are timed. It would be difficult for our officers to take the time to do that because they have to note the times and go back again. Having only 2 officers on duty, that's not very feasible for them. That's all. But yes.
Okay, just
I understand what
thinking
you're saying.
outside the box.
Just to address, you had mentioned, I don't know if you want to talk about, if you want to move on, there's a couple of things. I mean, Lynn had asked about overtime. Before I get to that, I don't know if there's anything else to talk about.
Go ahead with that.
Okay. So if you go, it's on page 11 of the budget, if everyone has it with them.
the expenses or revenue, where are you?
Page 11, expenses, yep.
Okay. Okay,
Okay, so if you go to line, it's A 3120-120, overtime.
okay,
You'll see the trend since 2016 on the bottom of those numbers. For different reasons, it could, there's obviously salaries have increased, so overtime increases with that as just paid more per hour. Other factors are people out for illnesses, family matters, injuries. The other thing that came up this year and was requested from the chief was 147,000 because of the additional time it's going to take on overtime for the police officers to conform with the Bail Reform Act, which is an issue. I did not, and I don't agree completely with that because there's other areas that are included in that number that was given. I reduced it to 120, which is what I'm more comfortable with, and I hope we can strive towards. And just so the board's aware, that includes mandatory training for all officers, most of it on overtime because there are only 2 officers scheduled. The other ones are going to be here. They're all required to get at least 26 hours of overtime a year. So that's for every officer. Then you have coverage issues, which we talked about, which are a concern. We're likely, and we can try, and we have been trying to get scheduling on so that we don't have overtime for scheduling issues. But for like instant call outs for someone taking a personal day at the last hour, it's difficult sometimes to get coverage from part-time personnel. So the majority of the 120 that I had proposed is for the mandatory overtime and for training overtime. There is some in there for scheduling though, and also for the bail reform coverage, which is going to be required. As I mentioned in the budget hearing that night with Chief, I'd hope that our residents could not break the law and get arrested to try and reduce that. That would be great on their part, but we can't make that happen on our own. The 120,000 also includes the standard overtime that's in the contract for the sergeants, which is 2.5 hours a week each for the 52 weeks. So that it gets up there. So the amount that's there just for scheduling issues is reduced. It's not as much as you might think, but still is something that we do need to work on and continue to work on. And I hope that we don't ever have to make that 120 mark. We should strive to be under it.
Okay.
John, can you just speak to where we're at as far as staffing now compared to where we were last year?
So even currently, we still have 1 person out on 207C. We're hoping to get them back shortly. We've had another officer out on leave for about 6 months this year. So our numbers are pretty high. We had a couple other issues where people were out for different reasons, including more recently due to illnesses, and we didn't want to risk other people in the department getting ill. But in years prior, we had 2, 3, 4 people out on 207C for one reason or another, and we weren't able to staff. And then we had 2 officer positions that we were having difficulty filling due to civil service issues and the tests that were coming out from the county in several months of that. And that's why in a couple years prior, you see those huge numbers, more than normal, and that was due to those factors.
And those positions have now been filled, correct?
Yep, they're filled. And we're
Thank you.
actually looking to fill at least 2 more part-time positions in the near future. Within the next couple months, we hope, to help with coverage issues.
Thank you.
Anything else on that? I know it's hard. It hurts to look at that one sometimes. Anything else anyone else wanted to look at?
Did anybody else have any notes or any?
I just have, since we talked about, I know that all of the funds have fund balances in them currently, and you're projecting adding to that. Do we have an idea what that those projections are? Obviously not right now today,
Yeah,
But yeah, like
I
if you
will-
can share that with us at some point.
Yeah, I will have it done. I could probably work on that tomorrow and have it to you guys at some point on Monday, so you have it before you make any final decisions. And
That would be
it,
wonderful.
it may not be exact, obviously, but we can definitely give you somewhat of an idea.
It's just an idea. I'm not looking for an exact, just an idea.
Okay, no problem.
Thank
I
you.
haven't heard anything in these board meetings, but I've been told by multiple people that it's in discussions to, I guess, maybe have a shared service with the Parks and Rec with the town, or the rec director working part-time with the town. Does that reduce our payment to him? Or is
No.
there any discussions on that, or am I just hearing wrong?
There was discussions on that last year, and they never came to fruition. That was it.
So-
The
So that's not
more
happening.
recent, no, more recently there was discussion at the town about hiring a rec person part-time, but even if that person was working with the village, that would not affect anything to do with the village or be shared in cost with the village. Separate. Just like a police officer that works here full-time may work part-time for another village, we don't share that cost. Be separate job.
Okay, so would his hours for us would stay the same, and it would be required that he work the hours that he currently works. Would he have to
I
do?
don't think that we should talk about a particular person. So
I'm talking
if
about the
somebody's
position.
working full-time somewhere, let's say someone's working full-time for the village and they wanted to work part-time somewhere else, they're allowed. We allow that.
Yep.
There's department heads that do that now, and that just cannot affect their full-time job. As long as it doesn't affect their full-time job and requirements of the village, then it's allowed. If it affects,
Yeah, I've got no issue with someone making extra money somewhere else. I was making sure that it wasn't a partnership with the town that then
Mhm.
that position would be able to work during the day somewhere else, when he's supposed to be in the village. So if that did happen, his hours for the village would stay the same, or whatever that position's hours would stay the same. Okay.
Yeah. And as you know, we did discuss this, and it was brought up to the board last year regarding potential shared service, but it never was voted on.
Okay.
Okay, so do you have any other potential areas? Do you need to go back to department heads and tell them this is how much more we need trimmed from your budget for those that haven't presented anything yet?
Yes. I have made the request and have had discussions with the department heads as well regarding that, and they're trying to figure out ways to reduce things by getting cost comparisons for other vendors as well. I also asked them to do a needs versus wants assessment to make sure that the things that are here are needs, not wants, so that we know the difference and distinction, and we can bring that to the board's attention so they can assist in determining whether those wants are actually needs and whether those needs are actually wants, and figure out if we're going to pay for those or not.
Okay. I guess the other area, and I've been talking about this since I got on the board a long time ago, is the amount of times that we need to run somewhere to pick up, I've seen Bill's gloves, cleaners, brooms, I'm just trying to think of if there's a more efficient and cost-effective way to do ordering for departments, to have those kinds of items on hand or buy them in bulk, because obviously it's cheaper if you purchase that way. I know we try to be efficient with the ordering, but I see so many vouchers, for things that I would think that we might be better off having on hand, so somebody could go to somewhere and get a bottle of cleaner or sponges or gloves or any of those items that seem to be picked up last minute, and then you're paying a higher price for them.
Yeah, we can look into that. I mean, I know that they try to, and they do order bulk in the beginning of the years, doing the bulk bids. And usually that bid is off either floating off the county bid, the state bid, or bidding ourselves for whatever those items might be. There may be a time where we're waiting for items to come in and need one. That occurs sometimes, or items that we don't have room to keep in stock in bulk. But on the norm, we try to have a sufficient amount of items so that we don't have to do that. Obviously, right now, a lot of things are coming in piecemeal. So we do have to run out a little more now, but I mean, it has happened over the years. It's not a new thing for us, as the mayor had mentioned. But we do try, and we're looking at that as well.
Yeah, I know we don't have a lot of storage room. It just made me crazy then, and I just, it just seems like it's time away from the job that you have to go to the store, find what you want, pay for it. I'm just thinking maybe there's a more efficient way maybe to do an ordering system so we have these things available. I'm not talking about we need 900 cases of X, Y, or Z, but maybe there's just a little more cohesive way to do our ordering so that we can get things in bulk and pay less for them.
Mm-hmm. So, as I don't know if you noticed in the beginning of the year, we usually have those group bulk orders from each department to try and get everything together and then split it up. And through the year, we do that, especially with toilet paper, paper towels, soap, gloves, garbage bags. We do those in bulk. And those are usually off a county bid. But most of the stuff would mostly be like if we had a small project and it was a rainy day and they didn't have the size bolts they needed to do the project, they would run and get bolts for that project that day. It's not something that we would do normally, so we wouldn't have a bulk supply.
Yeah, I get it, but it just seems, every time I look at the bills, there's a large number of them.
You're correct.
Just wondering if there was any way to streamline it that might be of a cost savings at some point.
And just so you know, we look at that, and we looked at that over the last 2 years. So, for example, if they were going to the same hardware store over and over again through the year, that cumulative purchase must be under the threshold for procurement as well, if that occurs, to make sure that we have the right pricing. So that's something that we look at to make sure we get the right price, as if we did buy it in bulk. So say they bought a shovel a month, it should be the same price as if we bought 12. And if those 12 shovels are over $1,000, we have to have 2 bids, or they have to be under a bid already, or a county bid, or a state bid, in order to buy them at that price. That's why F&F Industrial, sometimes you see some of them, they're on a county bid for those kinds of materials. And we try not to go there frequently, so we get accumulated a number of things we need. We'll run out there and grab 10 or 12 different things at the same time, so we don't have more than one trip.
Okay.
Now, and I will remind them to be mindful of that as well, because I know it's been an issue.
So you've sent out requests to department heads. When do you expect that to be in?
Well, we got one back today. I know that there was some other questions that 2 of them had that they were looking at, and hopefully get answers tomorrow. If we don't have everything tomorrow, we'll have it all Monday.
Okay, so we don't have a meeting scheduled for Monday, do we?
No, Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Okay, so does everybody want to meet again briefly on Monday to go over these numbers? Or do you want to do we have a big agenda for Tuesday, John?
Well, we have the public hearing for the budget. We have the public hearing for potential tax cap. We have a couple other small things that came up, including budget transfers.
Well, can at least a majority of us meet on Monday to talk about these things, to come up with a final number for the budget hearing?
Well, I have a question? I think there's 3 of these items that we can't discuss until we have exec, and I don't think we can have exec until Tuesday. Is that correct, John?
I know that we have the attorney on Tuesday. I don't know I'll have him on Monday, so that would be my guess.
Well, then how are we going to have a public hearing if we don't have a final, or we're just setting the public hearing, or the public hearing is Tuesday night?
We're having a public hearing. We don't have to close the public hearing.
Correct.
And we also are required to have a comment period, since it's not an in-person meeting for the public, of at least 5 days. So you will have to have, and we're not passing the budget that night. It will likely be the first meeting in May. Though, we're supposed to have it passed.
Okay, so we have time to make adjustments, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Because those three things that we can't discuss
Mhm.
are, I think, some of my top things that I would like to see happen. So I think
Yeah, no,
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think those three things would get us where we need to get.
I think it gets us where we need to get and accounts for more sales tax loss
Potential.
if we have it. Yeah.
So then,
So can I say, if we don't lose as much sales tax as people are saying, that I have $20,000 I'd like to add to the budget for technology upgrades?
yeah, go girl.
But just saying. So yeah, no, I'm fine with discussing this on Tuesday so that we can have executive session.
everybody else agree?
Yes.
Yep. Larry says yes,
Okay.
Brian says yes. Okay,
Give everybody sharp pencils.
thank you.
Okay. Anything
Okay.
else from anyone? Okay, have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.